want to wish everyone a happy Chanukah, and I'd like to share with you a very interesting thought. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbos quotes a famous argument between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel as to what is the optimal way of lighting the Chanukah candles. Beit Shammai says, the opposite of what we do, that you start with 8 candles the first day and you go down, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and on the last day of Chanukah you only light 1 candle. Beit Hillel, however, says Mosifa Holech, that you start with 1 and every single day you add an additional candle, as is normally the case, of course, whenever there is an argument between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. The halacha is like Beit Hillel, and that is why it's universally practiced today that we start with 1 and we go up. Beit Hillel is understood as simply saying, Ma'alin ba'kodesh v'ein moridin. When it comes to holiness, we always go up, we always ascend, so that's fine. But then the Gemara throws us for a loop when it offers an interpretation of Beit Shammai, where Beit Shammai says that the lighting of the Chanukah candles parallels the offerings in the Beit HaMikdash on Sukkos. On Sukkos, 70 bulls were offered as korbanos in the Beit HaMikdash, and they were brought in descending order. The first day 13, then 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, adding up to 70. And Beit Shammai simply says, without any further explanation, that the same way that the bulls of Sukkos were diminishing, so too the lights of Chanukah have to diminish. The problem is fairly obvious. I understand that Sukkos was diminishing, but what does Sukkos have to do with Chanukah? And why would Neirot Chanukah be conditioned or paralleled to what is going on with Sukkos? So I want to share with you a beautiful thought from the Sfas Emes, one of the great Hasidic rabbis. He was the Rabbi of Ger. And he says the following: we know that a human soul is compared to a candle that is lit by God. This is a verse in Proverbs, Mishlei, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. The soul of a person is a candle lit by Hashem. So when we look at the Chanukah candles, that is a mirror into our neshamos. And our neshamos have the characteristic of fire. But fire has 2 different characteristics. Fire can burn and destroy, and fire can warm and illuminate. And this represents 2 different ways of rectifying my soul. David HaMelech talked about 2 forms of tshuva. Sur meira, turn away from evil, v'yaseh tov, and generate goodness. Turning away from evil represents the fire that destroys. I look at myself, I identify various character traits that are negative, and I surgically target them and I burn them away. So when you look at fire in terms of the metaphor of soref umechaleh, that which burns and destroys, you're thinking of our approach to evil. And that corresponds to Sukkos, because the 70 bulls of Sukkos represent the 70 nations of the world that try to destroy us in various ways, sometimes by persecution and sometimes by assimilation, which really was the story of Chanukah. And those powers of evil progressively diminish as we approach the Messianic era, and that is symbolized in the Parei HaChag of Sukkos. So the Sfas Emes says, Beit Shammai is drawing the following connection. Just as on the macro level, the 70 parim of Sukkos that are diminishing represents the diminishment of the powers of evil against us, so too on the micro level, I confront by neshama and I identify the evil within, and I attack it and I rectify it and I'm metaken it. So when you look at fire from the perspective of soref umechaleh, and the tshuva that you're focusing on is the tshuva of sur meira, turning away from evil, the natural trajectory will be one of diminishment. What is Beis Hillel's response? That if one is truly spiritually strong, they could honestly confront their evil and eradicate it and attack it. But for most of us, that may be a counterproductive strategy. Because as I become more and more aware of my deficits and my faults, I'm often seized with depression and despair and helplessness and hopelessness. And rather than looking at my faults as an incentive for positive growth, it often gives me an excuse not to bother because I'll probably fail. So Beit Hillel says, instead of focusing on the tshuva of turning away from evil, which uses the metaphor of fire as that which destroys, let us focus on the goodness that is within us, the mitzvot that we enjoy, that we gravitate to. Let us fight the darkness, not by concentrating on the darkness. Let us fight the darkness by generating light and warmth. Seen in this way, the Chanukah candles represents, according to Beis Hillel, not the tshuva of attacking the evil, which uses the metaphor of fire as that which destroys, but the tshuva of asay tov, of generating goodness and warmth and light, which hopefully will progress with time. And the way the choshech, the way the darkness is removed, is not by attacking it, but by simply generating the light. So I want to emphasize, of course, that both Beis Hillel and Beit Shammai admit that a true rectification of the soul requires emphasis on both sur meira v'asay tov, but the difference is, where is your starting point? Beit Shammai says, take your negative deficits, attack them, change them, work on them, rectify them, and then you're ready for goodness and light. Beit Hillel says, well, perhaps we got to start in the opposite direction. Generate the light, create goodness, and that will be in itself a factor that will diminish the darkness. And the Sfas Emes says that is the basis of the machloket, whether we go down or whether we go up. Of course, we paskin halachically, like Beit Hillel, and that suggests indeed that the best way of fighting the darkness is by generating light. Thank you so much. Chanukah Somayach.